Let's unpack this. We are tackling, I think, one of the most profound, um, fundamental tensions that's built into any functional judicial system.
Hmm.
It's that constant struggle, right, to balance the core human right to liberty for an accused person,
Right.
the whole presumption of innocence,
Right.
with the absolute non-negotiable need to ensure public safety and, well, to make sure the person actually shows up for their trial.
And this deep dive is laser focused on how the Thai judicial system handles that exact tension. Our sources are incredibly rich. They're not just legal theory.
Not all.
What we have is a massive compilation of Supreme Court instructions, regulations, judicial orders. It's the actual practical rule book. It details everything from issuing arrest warrants to these minute financial standards for
A
collateral
process they call
or in temporary release.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where you really find the rules for putting, I guess, a price tag on temporary freedom.
That's our mission today. We want to understand the legal philosophy that's guiding the courts, and then get into the weeds of these astonishingly detailed financial standards that translate potential risk into a specific amount of BAT.
Yeah.
You're essentially getting a shortcut to understanding the operational heart of this whole process.
To start, I think we have to appreciate the incredible weight behind these judicial processes. Every single warrant, whether it's an arrest warrant, a tu'aka, or a search warrant, a kakata,
Right.
they are not issued lightly. They're issued under the ultimate sovereign authority, in the name of His Majesty the King.
And for listeners who might not be familiar with the constitutional structure, that's more than just the ceremonial phrase, right?
Oh, precisely. In this system, it establishes the king as the ultimate source of state authority. Warrants are acts of the state's power being directed at an individual.
So it's serious.
It's the highest level of formality and gravity. It underscores that the judiciary is acting on behalf of the highest authority in the land, not just some administrative body. It instantly conveys how serious the action is.
Okay, so if the gravity is that high, who is actually authorized to kick this whole thing off? This is where we move from the philosophy
Yeah.
to the operational control.
And the regulations have very clear rank requirements for the police officers requesting these orders.
Which I found fascinating.
Yeah, and it shows this clear hierarchy of accountability. For a routine criminal arrest or a search warrant, the requesting police officer has to be, at minimum, a lieutenant.
Yeah, dotted things.
Exactly. So that sets a solid minimum level of seniority.
But I noticed in the materials that for specific, let's say, intrusive orders, especially some of these specialized search warrants, that rank requirement just takes a massive jump.
It does.
Why is that? Why the big leap?
It's crucial because the level of judicial scrutiny increases exponentially with the potential intrusion. That rank can jump all the way up to a police major general.
Oh, cool.
Or-
Yes.
Yes. And that's the difference between a field officer asking for a routine warrant and needing a general, a very high-ranking command figure,
Yeah.
to sign off. It just dramatically increases the institutional accountability.
That makes perfect sense. The system is building in a check based on rank that's proportionate to the power being requested.
Exactly.
We also see the system adapting for these specialized judicial branches, which is really interesting.
Yeah, look at how they handle cases of corruption and official misconduct.
The Molkenvesi call by
Right. Those are often handled by specialized courts, but the regulations recognize that, geography shouldn't get in the way of justice. So if an arrest or a search has to happen outside the province where that specialized court sits,
They don't have to fly a judge out there.
no, the request can be made directly to the local provincial court, the Bodwarnko. It ensures speed and efficiency. Otherwise, a suspect could easily flee or tamper with evidence while you're waiting on paperwork.
And it seems like they're modernizing, too. I saw mentions of electronic systems for submitting warrant requests.
They are. The recent updates really push for that, just to streamline the whole process.
Okay, so we've established the process for apprehension. Now let's pivot to that core tension, liberty. Once a person is arrested, how does the system decide? Hold them or release them? What's the default position?
The guiding instruction is really clear, and it's rooted in that presumption of innocence. When it comes to temporary release on bail or frangentino, the system says a suspect or defendant should generally be granted release. Detention is supposed to be the exception. The court needs a compelling, explicit reason to deny liberty.
So liberty is the default. The burden of proof is heavily on those arguing against it.
That's it.
What are those specific reasons a court would look for to justify keeping someone locked up?
The regulations list them out: a high risk of flight, the potential to tamper with evidence or witnesses, or the possibility of committing more serious harm. But what's crucial here is the holistic assessment that's required.
Yeah, I found this part fascinating. It's not just about the crime they're accused of.
Not at all.
The judge has to look at the defendant's physical and mental health, their job, their family support, their criminal history. It sounds like they're trying to build a profile of the individual's likelihood of actually complying.
That's exactly right. The logic is that someone with a job and strong family ties is just inherently a lower flight risk. So the collateral amount is tailored to that individual risk, not just the abstract crime.
And the standards themselves have shifted to favor broader access. In 2019, those thresholds changed pretty dramatically, right? They expanded the standard collateral limit of 200,000 baht.
They did. Before 2019, that 200,000 bet limit only applied to crimes with a maximum sentence of up to 5 years. The revision pushed that to include cases carrying up to 10 years. And that's significant because a lot of nonviolent, white-collar, or less severe felonies fall in that 6 to 10-year range.
So by extending that fixed accessible limit, the judiciary basically made bail more achievable for thousands of people. It's an institutional move toward broadening access.
And that effort includes some very specific humanitarian clauses. The regulations mandate special consideration for vulnerable people.
Like who?
For example, a pregnant woman, a mother with a child under 3, or a disabled person. They might be granted bail with no collateral at all, or a tiny fraction of the standard rate.
That immediately shifts it from pure economics to social justice. Is that just charity, or is it pragmatic? Recognizing that, detaining a new mother is a huge burden that outweighs the flight risk.
It's a bit of both, but it's framed as pragmatic risk management. The court leverages family ties and reporting requirements instead of a high financial bond.
And speaking of family, there's a huge incentive built in for them to help.
A very strong one. If immediate family members or a spouse provide assets or cash, the court can allow them to post only 20% of the calculated total bail.
So if bail is set at 500,000 baht, they only need to come up with 100,000.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool. It recognizes that family are often the best guarantors that a defendant will show up.
Okay, now we get to the core of this deep dive, the actual list. The Central Standard Account of Collateral. The fuck outside this.
This is where the system tries to create uniformity across the entire country.
The sheer scope is it's incredible.
It is. This list, which they've been updating since 2004, gives judges specific reference points for thousands of different charges. The goal is to get rid of arbitrary decisions.
Let's slow down and look at some of these prices. They tell us a lot about how the judiciary views severity. Let's start with firearms.
Okay. Possession of an unregistered handgun, a Kainan, typically requires collateral of 100,000 baht. That's the baseline.
The context changes everything.
Everything. If that same unregistered handgun isn't just possessed, but carried openly in a city or a populated area,
which signals a much higher public danger, the price for temporary liberty immediately doubles to 200,000 baht. The price reflects the threat.
that's a great example of how the standardization isn't blind. We see a similar thing with drug offenses, especially for methamphetamine or...
Yeah, the difference in how risk is calculated there is huge.
So simple possession for a a small amount, say up to 10 units.
Right, for what's likely personal use, the collateral is often set quite low, maybe
Yeah.
10,000 baht.
Which is basically like a severe traffic ticket. But if you take that exact same quantity, 10 units, and the charge is elevated to intent to sell, the price just goes through the roof.
It catapults. The collateral jumps to somewhere between 350,000 and 500,000 baht. You move from penalizing a personal act to penalizing an act that harms the community. And at a certain point, the standardization just stops. If the drug quantity is really high, like 150 units of meth,
The regulations explicitly state that the amount is left entirely to the judge's discretion. The bootlore king pooking!
that's the point where the rule book gives way to judgment.
Exactly. The risk becomes so severe that a standard number is meaningless. We're talking about amounts that can climb into the millions, reflecting not just the crime, but the high flight risk of someone with those kinds of resources.
Okay, let's look at the prices for severe violent crimes under the criminal code, the duplicate.
The ranges are high, obviously, but still maintain the possibility of bail. Simple murder or robbery resulting in death, that carries collateral up to 500,000 baht.
Rapes is set at 200,000 baht.
Yes.
Now I have to ask, 500,000 baht for murder is less than the high end for drug trafficking. Does that mean the judiciary is prioritizing flight risk over the severity of the crime?
That is a fascinating and critical observation, and the answer is yes. The collateral is fundamentally meant to ensure appearance, not to punish.
I see.
So the amount reflects the judge's assessment of what financial incentive is needed to get that person back to court. For a high-level trafficker, 500,000 baht might be nothing. For a person facing a murder charge, it might be everything they or their family owns.
So the system is pricing the risk of flight, not the moral offense itself.
Precisely.
And what really shows how comprehensive this is the inclusion of just obscure offenses. I mean, you could spend days reading this list, even misusing stamps.
Yes.
Kata Kanagana has a specific collateral instruction of 80,000 baht.
It's an exhaustive operational manual. It confirms the system prizes predictability, pricing administrative crimes right alongside violent ones. Its inclusion ensures a judge doesn't just arbitrarily pick a number, they have a guide.
So, if the whole system's designed for consistency, what happens when the defendant is genuinely impoverished, a kanokibi, and just can't meet even the minimum price?
That's where non-financial measures have to come in. And a major one is the use of electronic monitoring, or EM devices, which were formally integrated in 2019.
Ankle monitors?
Basically, yes. The court can impose conditions, like a curfew or restricted travel, and use these devices to verify compliance.
So it's a direct replacement for financial security. But I imagine there are strict rules about who gets monitored.
Absolutely. Especially for minors. The regulations are very specific. EM devices can only be ordered for someone under 18 if they explicitly consent and they exhibit behavior that poses a severe danger to others.
So the bar is set very high.
Very high. It's not a casual substitute.
Yeah.
It's used when the safety concern is profound, and the tech is tightly managed by a central control center that gets immediate alerts if the device is tampered with.
What about international flight risk? Collateral alone can't always solve that.
The rules for foreigners are direct and stringent. They have to consent to surrendering their passport to the court.
And they're banned from leaving the country.
Explicitly. And crucially, that order is immediately sent to the Immigration Bureau, the It becomes an enforceable travel ban at every single port of exit.
That's a key logistical step. The court order becomes a physical barrier.
Right. And finally, we see the system's flexibility during extraordinary times. The materials show specific recommendations for granting bail during the COVID-19 pandemic to reduce crowding in detention centers.
And separately, instructions for managing detention under broader emergency decrees.
It shows the system can adapt its core procedures, which are about individual rights, during a national crisis where state power is elevated.
So what we've seen today is this whole journey from high sovereign authority down to these incredibly specific financial calculations for almost every crime you can think of.
It shows the immense institutional investment in creating uniform standards, attempting to minimize judicial bias through standardization.
These standards provide crucial uniformity, for sure. So judges aren't just pulling numbers out of thin air. But the final price for freedom always comes back to discretion, doesn't it?
It does. We saw that with the EM devices for the poor, the discretionary millions for high flight risks, and the humanitarian cases where the price is just set at zero. The list is the foundation, but the application, that judgment of risk, that remains a deeply human decision.
So our final thought for you to consider is this. When a highly detailed public schedule sets a dollar amount for almost every crime, does that relentless standardization truly increase public trust and access to justice? Or does the remaining necessity of judicial discretion, that ability to raise or lower the price based on risk, still carry the most consequential weight in the most difficult and controversial cases? That's a question worth exploring long after the final ruling.